You may think you're in a healthy relationship, but what if it's slowly suffocating your spiritual well-being without you even realizing it? Picture this. Every conversation leaves you emotionally drained. Every interaction feels like a test of your soul, and your beliefs are twisted to serve someone else's agenda. These aren't just signs of a troubled relationship. They're warning bells of something far deeper, spiritual toxicity. What if I told you that the very relationship you cherish could be the one holding you back from the personal growth and peace you deserve? A toxic spiritual connection isn't always obvious at first, but it reveals itself in subtle, dangerous ways. So how do you know when you're drowning in an environment that's stifling your inner peace and growth? I'm about to show you 5 red flags that could signal a spiritually toxic relationship. And trust me, you'll want to know these before it's too late. The good news, there's a way out. By the end of this video, you'll not only recognize the signs, but also learn how to reclaim your spiritual space so you can thrive in your relationships rather than just survive them. Stick around, because the solution is closer than you think. Have you ever noticed how after spending time with your partner, you feel emotionally exhausted rather than uplifted? Maybe you leave a conversation or an argument feeling heavier than when you entered it. This feeling is not just physical fatigue. It's the overwhelming weight of negative energy that lingers in the space between you two. The impact of constant negativity is like an invisible cloud hanging over your connection. It's not the occasional bad day or disagreement. It's a continuous drain of energy that builds up over time, poisoning the emotional atmosphere of the relationship. When negative emotions dominate, they create a toxic environment that impacts every interaction. Instead of feeling supported, loved, and heard, you start to feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, never knowing when the next emotional storm will hit. At first, it may not seem so bad. A few arguments here and there, some tense moments, but nothing you can't work through, right? But what happens when negativity becomes the default setting of your relationship? The complaining, criticizing, and emotional withdrawal start to chip away at the foundation. And you realize that instead of building each other up, you're tearing each other down. The problem is that over time, the negativity becomes normalized, making it harder to recognize how damaging it's truly become. This constant negativity isn't just about the words that are spoken. It's about the underlying emotional current that flows between you. Words of blame, guilt, and frustration. They come out during disagreements, but the real issue lies in the energy behind them. These negative emotions have a way of infiltrating every corner of your relationship. Even moments that should be peaceful and loving start to feel tense and uncomfortable. When you're constantly exposed to this kind of energy, it wears you down, slowly eroding your emotional strength. And it's not just about what's being said. It's the unsaid things that also weigh on you. The silence that follows a fight, the cold shoulder, the distance that grows when one person is emotionally withdrawing while the other is desperately trying to keep things together. Even small gestures, like lack of affection or eye contact, contribute to the draining atmosphere. The emotional disconnect becomes a cycle that feeds itself. The more negativity there is, the more withdrawn and distant both partners become, making it harder to break free. This negativity also takes its toll on your mental health. When you're constantly surrounded by negative emotions, it's easy to start internalizing them. You begin to question your own worth, wonder if you're doing something wrong, or feel like you're never good enough. It's a dangerous downward spiral, where negativity isn't just coming from your partner, but you start projecting it onto yourself as well. In the long run, this emotional exhaustion can manifest physically, with feelings of fatigue, anxiety, and even depression. Over time, it becomes difficult to find any light in the relationship. Every conversation starts to feel like a battle, and every interaction is filtered through the lens of negativity. The worst part, you may not even realize it's happening at first. It starts off small, but before you know it, it becomes the dominant force in your relationship. So how do you escape this cycle? It starts with recognizing the signs and taking conscious steps to bring balance back. You need to have open, honest conversations about how negativity is affecting both of you. This isn't about placing blame. It's about acknowledging the emotional landscape of your relationship and deciding to change it. Both partners need to commit to shifting the energy between them. This means working on becoming aware of your own emotional responses, being mindful of how you communicate, and most importantly, choosing positivity and understanding over criticism and judgment. In the process, it's essential to rediscover your emotional and spiritual center. When negative energy dominates, you may lose touch with who you truly are, your own peace, your own joy, and your ability to love unconditionally. Reconnecting with yourself through mindfulness, self-care, and personal growth can help you regain that balance. It allows you to show up as your authentic self without being bogged down by the toxic energy around you. A relationship should lift you up, not drain you. When negativity takes over, it can be hard to see the path to recovery, but with intentional effort and a shared commitment to change, you can rediscover the joy and harmony that should define your connection. And if it's not possible to turn things around together, it's essential to recognize when it's time to let go and preserve your own peace. Toxic energy, no matter how much you may love someone, should never become your new norm. What happens when your most basic needs are continuously overlooked or dismissed? When you begin to feel like your voice is lost in the noise, and your emotional or spiritual boundaries are treated like mere suggestions rather than essential parts of who you are. It's a painful reality that many people face in relationships where respect for personal space is minimal or non-existent. The boundaries you once held dear are slowly chipped away, and before you know it, you're left feeling exposed, vulnerable, and disconnected. Boundaries are not just physical, they're deeply emotional and spiritual as well. They are the invisible lines that define your sense of self, safety, and well-being within the relationship. When these boundaries are respected, you feel seen, heard, and understood. But when they're constantly disregarded, it creates a toxic dynamic where you're left feeling powerless and invisible, as though your needs and desires don't matter. At the core of every healthy relationship is a mutual understanding of each other's limits and needs. But when one person consistently ignores the other's boundaries, it becomes an unhealthy power dynamic. It's like one person is constantly walking over the other, forcing them to shrink or bend in ways that are unnatural or harmful. This kind of behavior erodes trust, creates emotional disconnection, and prevents true intimacy from forming. What starts as minor violations can quickly escalate into patterns of manipulation, control, and neglect. Take emotional space, for example. If you feel overwhelmed or need time alone to recharge, it's not a rejection of your partner, it's a necessary act of self-care. But in a spiritually toxic relationship, this request for space may be met with guilt or resistance. Your partner might not understand your need for solitude and instead pressures you into staying engaged or available, even when you're emotionally drained. Over time, this constant violation of emotional space can lead to burnout, frustration, and resentment, leaving you feeling like you have no escape from the demands of the relationship. Similarly, the disregard for your mental boundaries can have far-reaching consequences. When your thoughts, feelings, and opinions are constantly dismissed, criticized, or ignored, it sends a clear message that your inner world isn't valued. Imagine sharing your thoughts, ideas, or concerns with your partner, only to have them be belittled or brushed off. This lack of emotional acknowledgement can leave you questioning your worth and sense of self. It creates an environment where you feel you have to constantly defend your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, instead of feeling safe to be vulnerable and authentic. The problem becomes even more pronounced when the violation of boundaries becomes a repeated pattern. What may have been a one-time incident where your partner dismissed your need for alone time or ignored your emotional needs turns into a habit. The more this happens, the more difficult it becomes to express your desires and needs freely, and you may begin to shut down emotionally, building walls around your heart. It's essential to recognize that boundaries are not about building walls. They're about creating a foundation of respect. When both people in the relationship understand and honor each other's boundaries, the relationship becomes a safe haven for growth, love, and connection. Boundaries allow each person to show up as their full authentic self without fear of being manipulated or dismissed. Without this mutual respect, however, the relationship becomes one-sided, and trust begins to erode. What happens when physical boundaries are also disregarded? Physical touch, intimacy, and affection are key components of a healthy relationship. But in a spiritually toxic relationship, these actions are often manipulated or forced, whether it's insisting on physical contact when the other person isn't comfortable, or ignoring the other's desire for intimacy. These violations are often seen as an entitlement. Instead of fostering closeness, they create feelings of violation, discomfort, and resentment. The real danger here is that these violations of boundaries don't always come in obvious, overt forms. Often they're subtle, small gestures, comments, or actions that chip away at your sense of control. For example, your partner might make jokes about your emotional boundaries or brush off your request for personal space, claiming that you're too sensitive or overreacting. Over time, this continuous minimization of your needs can cause you to second-guess yourself and your own instincts, which can be incredibly disempowering. How do you fix a relationship that consistently disrespects your boundaries? First, it's vital to understand that your boundaries are rash, and they are not negotiable. If your partner isn't willing to respect them, that's a clear sign that the relationship isn't built on mutual trust and respect. Open, honest communication is crucial. Explain why your boundaries are important and how they contribute to your emotional well-being. Be firm but compassionate in your requests. If the other person is open to growth and change, they'll understand the significance of these boundaries and work with you to honor them. But the responsibility also lies with you to recognize when your boundaries are being repeatedly violated. If you've already communicated your needs, but the behavior persists, it may be time to reevaluate the relationship. True love doesn't demand that you sacrifice yourself for the sake of keeping peace. A relationship should support and nurture your emotional and spiritual growth, not drain it. Don't wait until you've lost yourself in the process. Protect your boundaries with confidence and make sure you're in a relationship that values you for who you truly are. If you've been feeling trapped by lust or ready to break free from its grip, I want you to know there's a way out, and it starts with the truth. In my ebook, 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust Before It Destroys You, I dive deep into powerful scriptural wisdom that has helped countless individuals reclaim their purity, their peace, and their spiritual strength. These aren't just empty promises or theory. The principles in this book are backed by real-life transformations, men and women who have experienced victory over their struggles and built a life of true freedom. Lust doesn't have to control you, and it's never too late to take control of your mind, body, and spirit. In this guide, you'll uncover practical, biblical insights that will change the way you see temptation and how you handle it. Actionable steps to break the cycle of lust and reclaim your peace and purity. A deeper understanding of how to guard your heart and mind with spiritual strength. What you'll discover inside will not only equip you to destroy lust, but also help you grow in your relationship with God, becoming the best version of yourself. Are you ready to make the change? The tools you need are right here. Don't let lust control your life for one more day. Take that first step toward freedom by grabbing your copy of 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust Before It Destroys You. The link to purchase is in the video description and the pinned comment. Don't wait. Transform your life today. Take back your power and your purpose. Let's break free from lust together. Imagine a relationship where your partner uses your shared faith as a weapon to control you. Subtly at first, but increasingly with intensity. They present their spiritual views as the only correct way, and guilt trip you whenever your beliefs don't align with theirs. Slowly you start to feel that your own connection to your spirituality is being manipulated, twisted to fit their needs, desires, or agenda. You're no longer living your spiritual truth. Instead, you're living to meet someone else's spiritual expectation. Spiritual manipulation in a relationship can be one of the most insidious forms of control. Unlike overtly controlling behaviors, it often hides behind a veil of righteousness, making it difficult to recognize until it's too late. At first, it may feel like a simple difference of opinion, but it quickly escalates into a systematic effort to undermine your own spiritual beliefs, replacing them with your partner's. Take, for example, the subtle art of guilt tripping. When your partner uses spirituality as a tool to make you feel guilty for not attending church, not praying enough, or not following a certain spiritual practice, they are crossing a boundary. While it's natural to encourage each other to grow spiritually, doing so from a place of shame or guilt is toxic. This type of manipulation can make you feel unworthy or disconnected from your spiritual center, making you question your own faith. The guilt doesn't come from a desire to uplift. It comes from a desire to control. Furthermore, this manipulation isn't always done openly. It may appear as a well-meaning suggestion, like "I think you should spend more time praying. It's what good Christians do." But this thinly veiled judgment creates pressure, distorting the way you approach your spirituality. Rather than choosing your spiritual practices from a place of internal desire and growth, you begin to do things to please your partner or avoid conflict. Over time, this can disconnect you from your spiritual path, leaving you feeling spiritually empty or resentful. Another sign of spiritual manipulation is when your partner pushes their personal beliefs over your own, disregarding your spiritual autonomy. Spirituality is deeply personal, and everyone's journey is unique. Yet when one partner insists on their way as the only way, it creates a toxic dynamic. This can manifest in various forms, from undermining your religious practices to criticizing the way you express your spirituality. Perhaps your partner belittles your spiritual practices, making you feel like your connection with God isn't valid or that your personal beliefs are inferior. This constant invalidation of your beliefs can cause confusion and self-doubt. You may begin to question your faith or feel like you're not spiritual enough to be in the relationship. In some cases, the manipulation goes even deeper, with one partner claiming a higher spiritual authority or using spiritual phrases like "God wants us to do this," or "It's not God's will for us to be apart," to control decisions or actions that align more with their desires than with any true spiritual calling. This type of behavior not only erodes the foundation of the relationship, but also diminishes the authenticity of each person's spiritual journey. One of the most dangerous aspects of spiritual manipulation is that it can slowly chip away at your sense of self-worth. When your partner's beliefs are constantly being pushed on you and your own beliefs are undermined, it can create a sense of dependency on them for spiritual validation. Rather than relying on your own relationship with God, you start to look to your partner for approval and guidance. Over time, this becomes unhealthy and unsustainable, as it fosters an imbalance in the relationship, where one person holds all the power and the other is left feeling small and unimportant. So how do you protect your spirituality in a relationship where manipulation is at play? The first step is to recognize when it's happening. Trust your intuition. If you feel pressured, invalidated, or ashamed of your own beliefs, it's time to take a step back. It's essential to reestablish your personal spiritual boundaries and communicate them clearly to your partner. Your spiritual autonomy is yours to protect, and it's vital to voice when you feel that autonomy is being compromised. The next step is to find common ground. If you and your partner have differing beliefs or spiritual practices, it's crucial to approach these differences with respect, love, and openness. Instead of trying to convert each other or force each other into one way of thinking, explore how you can both support each other's spiritual journeys. This may mean going to separate places of worship, practicing individual rituals, or simply honoring each other's need for spiritual growth in different ways. If spiritual manipulation continues despite your efforts to communicate and set boundaries, it may be time to consider the bigger picture. A healthy relationship allows both partners to grow independently while nurturing shared values. If your partner's belief system continually erodes your own spiritual foundation, it could indicate a deeper issue in the relationship, one that may require reevaluation. True spiritual growth happens when both individuals feel free to explore their faith without fear of judgment or control. Ultimately, a relationship should be a space where both individuals can thrive spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. If spirituality is being used as a tool to control or manipulate, it's no longer serving the higher purpose it was intended for. In such a situation, it's crucial to reclaim your spiritual power, protect your boundaries, and make sure you're walking a path that aligns with your own soul's truth. There's a quiet danger in relationships, one that doesn't always make noise but slowly eats away at your sense of self. It's the subtle feeling that you've lost touch with who you truly are, that you've sacrificed your own identity, your dreams, and your passions for the sake of someone else. At first, it might feel like you're simply compromising, trying to meet halfway, or aligning with your partner's needs. But over time, you start to notice a pattern where your own individuality gets pushed aside, buried under the weight of the relationship. This loss of self doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small, seemingly insignificant changes. Maybe you start prioritizing your partner's wants over your own, or perhaps you start adopting their habits, beliefs, and preferences to fit in better. At first, it seems harmless. After all, relationships involve a degree of merging. But when these shifts start to take over every aspect of your life, from your hobbies to your spiritual practices, the toll begins to mount. The feeling of losing yourself in a relationship can be unsettling. It's not just about losing your personality, it's about losing the essence of who you are at the core. This is especially true when it comes to spirituality. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel encouraged to grow individually, spiritually, and emotionally, while also growing together. However, when one person's growth is constantly sacrificed for the other, it leads to a deep spiritual disconnection. If you've ever felt like your connection to God or your spiritual practices have been compromised, it's a strong indicator that your individuality is at risk. The constant need to accommodate your partner's spiritual beliefs, or worse, to mold yourself into someone you're not, can create an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Your faith becomes something secondary, something that you do for the sake of the relationship, rather than a personal transformative experience that nourishes your soul. The worst part of losing your individuality is the gradual erosion of your personal goals and dreams. Relationships, especially unhealthy ones, can often create an environment where your partner's aspirations take precedence. You begin to think that your own goals aren't important, or worse, that they're selfish. You may start to believe that your dreams are no longer worth pursuing, simply because they don't align with your partner's vision for the future. This is particularly dangerous when it comes to spiritual growth. When your personal journey with God becomes tangled with your partner's, it becomes difficult to differentiate your own faith from the relationship's dynamics. Spiritual growth should be a deeply personal experience that helps you understand who you are and why you're here. It should allow you to discover your purpose and align with your higher self. When you lose sight of this, your growth stagnates and you're left feeling stuck, disconnected, and emotionally exhausted. The temptation to please your partner, to continually bend and shape yourself to fit into their mold, becomes a trap. At first, you may justify this by thinking that love requires sacrifice. While sacrifice is an important part of any relationship, it should never come at the cost of your self-worth, growth, or identity. You can't build a lasting connection with someone when you're not in touch with who you are. True love allows for growth, for the space to be your authentic self, and for the freedom to pursue your personal journey without fear of losing your partner. If you've noticed that your spiritual identity has taken a back seat in the relationship, it's time to reflect on what's been sacrificed. Are you still nurturing your spiritual practices? Are you still growing in the areas that matter most to you? Or have you fallen into a pattern of always putting your partner's needs before your own, leaving your spirit to wither? The key to maintaining your individuality while in a relationship is finding balance. You don't have to choose between your partner and your personal growth. The healthiest relationships allow both individuals to flourish in their own right, while still coming together to create something powerful and supportive. If you're sacrificing your spiritual connection, your passions, or your growth for the sake of the relationship, it's a sign that the dynamics need to shift. Take time to reconnect with yourself. Spend time in solitude, nurturing your personal spiritual practices, pursuing your passions, and focusing on your goals. Reaffirm your values and your beliefs, and make sure that you're living authentically. It's okay to have different spiritual beliefs than your partner, and it's okay to have your own dreams that don't directly align with theirs. A healthy relationship allows for individuality, and your spiritual growth should never be stunted by another person's expectations or needs. Reclaim your identity and your sense of self. You deserve a relationship where you can shine as your authentic self, where your individuality is celebrated, not sacrificed. The most powerful relationships are those where both partners are strong and independent, each with their own spiritual path, supporting one another along the way. Don't let the fear of losing your partner push you into a life where you're constantly compromising your own truth. You are worthy of love that encourages you to become the best version of yourself, and that includes honoring your spiritual journey. What do you do when every conversation feels like an uphill battle, and no matter how hard you try, peace seems just out of reach? The constant tension, the recurring arguments, the unresolved conflicts, these things start to seep into the very fabric of your relationship. They drain the joy and love, leaving behind only frustration and disconnection. You've tried to work things out, but no matter what you do, it feels like you're spinning your wheels, unable to reach any sort of resolution. This is the reality of consistent disharmony, a state where conflict becomes the norm, and peace feels like a distant dream. In a healthy relationship, disagreements are inevitable, but they are meant to be temporary and resolved through open communication and mutual understanding. However, when arguments become persistent and recurring, and the emotional wounds from past conflicts remain unhealed, it creates an environment of constant emotional unrest. At first, it might just be small irritation, little things that set you off, things that you chalk up to stress or miscommunication. Maybe it's the way your partner doesn't listen, or how they dismiss your feelings. But over time, these small irritations compound, and what once seemed like a minor issue becomes a major point of contention. This is where tension begins to build. You're no longer arguing about the issue at hand. You're arguing because there's a larger undercurrent of unresolved frustration. You start to feel like you're fighting for your voice to be heard, but the more you try to speak your truth, the more the conflict escalates. The real problem with persistent disharmony isn't just the frequency of the fights. It's the inability to resolve them. You both want to connect, but you keep missing the mark. The same issues resurface again and again, and no matter how many times you talk about them, the solutions always seem out of reach. The emotional gap between you continues to widen, and before long it feels like you're living in two different worlds. Unable to bridge the distance, One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this kind of ongoing conflict is the feeling of emotional exhaustion. You begin to question whether it's even worth trying anymore. You've already put in the effort, had the conversations, tried the solutions, yet nothing changes. The energy you're pouring into trying to fix things starts to feel like a losing battle, and the constant stress of unresolved issues takes a toll on your mental and physical well-being. It's a vicious cycle. The more you try to repair the relationship, the more exhausted you become, which in turn fuels more conflict. What's worse is the emotional disconnection that follows. When conflict becomes unresolvable, it's not just the issues that go unresolved, it's the emotional intimacy. The constant tension starts to overshadow any moments of joy, making it harder and harder to feel truly connected. You start to question whether your partner is really your partner or just someone you're coexisting with. The love you once felt now feels distant, overshadowed by anger, hurt, and frustration. So how do you break free from this cycle? The first step is recognizing that unresolved conflict isn't just about the issue at hand. It's about the patterns that are being created. If you find yourself stuck in the same arguments, unable to move forward, it's essential to take a step back and look at the dynamics at play. What's driving the conflict? Is it a lack of communication, unspoken expectations, or deeper emotional wounds that haven't been addressed? Communication is key, but it's not just about talking. It's about truly listening. In many relationships, arguments are more about being heard than about resolving the issue itself. When you approach each conversation with the intent to truly understand your partner, instead of just proving your point, it opens up a space for vulnerability and connection. If both partners feel safe enough to express their feelings without judgment or defensiveness, it creates an opportunity for genuine resolution. It's also important to address any underlying emotional issues that may be fueling the conflict. Sometimes constant tension isn't about the surface level issue but the deeper unresolved feelings that both partners are carrying. These may be related to past experiences, insecurities, or unmet needs. If you can get to the root of these emotional wounds, you'll have a better chance of healing the relationship as a whole. However, some conflicts are simply too complex or deep-rooted to resolve on your own. In these cases, seeking outside help, whether it's through counseling, therapy, or relationship coaching, can be a powerful step toward healing. A neutral third party can offer fresh perspectives, communication tools, and strategies that can help both partners work through the ongoing tension and find common ground. Finally, it's crucial to acknowledge when the conflict is no longer about working together to resolve issues, but about individual emotional health. If after putting in the effort, the relationship remains toxic and continues to harm your well-being, it may be time to reconsider whether it's worth continuing the fight. No relationship should make you feel constantly drained, unheard, or emotionally unsafe. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your partner is to step away and reclaim your peace. Consistency and disharmony doesn't have to be the new normal. Conflict in relationships is inevitable, but when it becomes a pattern that you can't break, it's a sign that something deeper needs to be addressed. Whether through communication, understanding, or seeking professional guidance, there are ways to move past the conflict, but it requires both partners to be committed to not just resolving the issue at hand, but healing the relationship as a whole. When you're trapped in a relationship where manipulation, constant conflict, and disrespect the boundaries are the norm, it can feel like you're stuck in an emotional whirlwind, unable to break free. These toxic patterns drain your energy, silence your voice, and make it difficult to stay true to your spiritual self. But here's the powerful truth: you don't have to stay in this cycle. Healing is possible. Reclaiming your peace, your boundaries, and your sense of self is within your reach. The journey starts with recognizing these toxic behaviors for what they are. Once you can identify them, you can begin to take action, whether it's through deeper self-awareness, setting firm boundaries, or seeking the support you deserve. Relationships should nurture your growth, not stifle it. And no matter how deep the wounds may seem, you can heal and rebuild the healthy, balanced connection you truly deserve. If you're dealing with destructive patterns in your relationships, it's crucial to take control and make changes, starting with your personal well-being. I've seen countless people transform their lives when they regain control of their emotional and spiritual health. And speaking of spiritual health, if you've struggled with controlling lust or feeling like you've lost yourself in unhealthy habits, I have a powerful resource to help. In my ebook, 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust Before It Destroys You, I share the proven spiritual principles and practices that can help you break free from the grip of lust and redirect your energy into a healthy, fulfilling life. These biblical truths have the power to restore your spiritual strength, rebuild your integrity, and lead you toward lasting freedom. The link to purchase the ebook is in the video description and the pinned comment. Don't wait another day. Take that first step towards breaking free. Reclaim your peace and let go of the toxic patterns that have held you back for too long.